Jake, go inside. This is go inside, okay? This is super embarrassing. Go inside, but hey, can you get out from in front of the ground? Well, hello, patriots and freedom fighters across Saskatchewan, around the country, and around the world. Welcome to another edition. By the way, don't tell Facebook. I think I'm still supposed to be suspended from live streaming on Facebook, but if we don't tell them, maybe it'll be okay. So right now, at present, I'm at 4 different Facebook platforms. I'm on 2 different YouTube platforms. I'm on Twitter and I'm on DLive. Our numbers should be quite good today. Anyways, got some new names in here too. That's good to see. Hey, Ragnar. Lisa Prue or Lisa Proust? How are you? Good to see you. Kodiak is here in the house. Or in the den, I should say. Sandy says you're my hero. You know, I get that once in a while, and it's kind of embarrassing. I haven't done anything to put me on hero status. There's too many real heroes that deserve that. But I'm doing what I can. Yeah, there's an easy way to easily stop getting suspended on Facebook. Yeah, I don't know. I hear Jamie Nix, his account was blasted, zapped, gone on Facebook. So here we are. This isn't going to be a long stream. My weekend was actually dedicated yesterday to our anniversary, my wife and I's anniversary, 12 years. So yesterday was supposed to be sort of quiet, relaxed, hang out. And today was also supposed to be the same. However, last night, I hadn't talked to anybody regarding the protests in Saskatoon or Regina. I didn't go to the one in Saskatoon. I thought it was a good one to take a break from, just because it was so cold. I didn't think there'd be a lot of people there anyway. And it was a good day for me to say, I'm taking a break. But Regina also had one, and I didn't pay attention. But then I had my attention drawn to a tweet put out by Premier Scott Moe. And so I want to share that with you and let you know what I've been up to since. This was last night. So there, the protests yesterday in Regina, they switched it up a little bit, and I guess they decided to show up at Dr. Shahab's house in his residential area that he lives in. I guess there was 9 people. I didn't know any details before I saw this tweet by Mo. I'm just gonna fix something here so I can read it properly. So I had no real context to what he was talking about. So it was kind of interesting to go through that process without any context. Well, before we do that, let's show you what Mo is referring to in his tweet. We'll do that first. We'll set the context. We'll give you the context before I show you what Mo says. All right, let's see. Needless to say, it's lit everybody's hair on fire in Saskatoon. Or Saskatchewan, I should say. I can't see nothing here. Hang on. Okay. Sorry, guys. I know it's really unprofessional. But I gotta find the play button. And my light hangs in front of the TV that I use as my second monitor. And then it blocks me from seeing things. Okay, let's try that. All right, just for context, here is the residential area in Regina, I guess where Dr. Shahab lives, and they had decided that they were going to go and get his attention. I assume their frustration level is high, like ours is, that all of these protests, the last 3-4 months of protest, we have sort of demanded that Scott Moe and the government open the debate. Let's open the dialogue. Let's be transparent. Let's bring all of the experts to the table, and let's have a discussion. And of course, that hasn't happened. And the protests that we've had to this point has done a good job of waking people up around us and some of the community, which is good. More and more people are understanding, and they once in a while they'll talk about us if there's something interesting to talk about from their perspective. So it's been good that way. But of course, the government never listens. The government doesn't pay attention. The only time they pay attention is when you get 500 people out that represent thousands of others. Then they'll respond in some way to what's happening. But up until then, it's the only response has been let's issue some tickets. Let's ignore the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and let's ignore these folks pressuring us to open the debate and the discussion. So it gets frustrating when we know we represent a large contingent of the Saskatchewan population in what we're saying and what we're asking for, and we're not the least bit unreasonable. We're talking about what we consider or should consider a free country, a free province, a free exchange of ideas, an open and transparent debate. It's not unreasonable to demand that. The fact that we have to stand outside every weekend demanding that we have open and honest, transparent discussion is a sign of a big problem. That's a sign of an enormous problem in our province and in our country when we have to demand open and honest, transparent discussion. That's a problem. It's a huge problem, and people are getting frustrated. And the longer they avoid this, the more frustrated, the more angered people are going to get. I'm kudos to every single person that showed up to protests around the province, across the country. The amount of restraint, the amount of tolerance that you have all shown in this last 9 months is amazing. Kudos to each and every one of you folks. These protests have been peaceful from the start to this very day. In fact, the only violence I've ever witnessed was some guy trying to run one of us over in Saskatoon. That's it. That's the only violence, and it was directed to us, against us. We've been nothing but peaceful. We haven't broken any laws. In fact, we're exercising our rights under the Charter to assemble peacefully, to express ourselves openly. And yet we are subjected to continuous shaming, ridiculing, dismissing from the media and from the politicians and from a lot of folks that, well, they simply just follow the singular narrative provided by the media and the government. And we've remained completely peaceful, and we've remained completely lawful in everything we've done, regardless of the bullshit tickets they've given us. I'm at 11,200. There's other people that have 3 tickets, 2 tickets, 1 ticket, many others, for simply exercising a right under the Charter. So it's frustrating. So you're going to start to see different things happening naturally. When people aren't heard, when our voices aren't respected, when we're completely dismissed with our concerns, and they are most definitely legitimate concerns, based on all the evidence, based on all of the doctors, 40,000 healthcare professionals signed the Great Barrington Declaration. Doctors, I mean, it's actually easier to find opposing views now than it is to find, well, you can't find any evidence up to and including the World Health Organization when they come out on Inauguration Day, coincidentally enough, and we had a show on that, essentially saying that the PCR test in its current state and under its current procedure doesn't work. There's a really great video that came out today, by the way. It's on my Facebook. It's on my Twitter. I just shared it. Whistleblower within the PCR community. And these people explain it very well. I encourage everyone to share it. Anyways, so you're going to see people getting more and more frustrated. Now, even at that level of frustration, even at that level of anger, and watching our economy being destroyed, watching our small businesses being destroyed, watching livelihoods be destroyed, watching children and their childhoods being destroyed because they can't go play their sports, they can't be with their friends, they can't develop properly. All of these consequences, of course, people are going to get frustrated. Of course, people are going to get angry. I'm at a permanent level of anger and frustration, but we still remain peaceful and we still remain lawful. So here is what Regina decided to do. Because we've been ignored to this point, I'm assuming they decided, well, let's take it directly to Dr. Shahab, and maybe then he'll pay attention. So let's have a look at what transpired there. So You got maybe 5 people on this sidewalk and 3 or 4 on this sidewalk. They're not screaming, they're not yelling, they're not threatening anybody. They're simply standing on a public sidewalk on a public street in front of a residence that happens to be Dr. Shahab. It's portrayed. When I read what I saw, oh, here, I'm going to pull it up. We don't need to see any more of this, really, because it's so insignificant. But when I read what Premier Mo had tweeted, I was like, oh my God, what the hell happened? What is going on? And I was like, oh boy. Earlier today, according to Premier Scott Moe, a group of idiots, not yahoos, but idiots, taking his cues from Premier Ford and Pallister, and they like to, talk about some of the people who voted for them, but the people that they're supposed to represent, idiots, took their misguided protest. Well, okay, what's misguided about it? What's misguided about a protest? Especially under the circumstances when you've continually lied to the Saskatchewan people, when the evidence has been shown, has been proven, and now verified by the World Health Organization. What's misguided about these protests? To Dr. Shahab's family home in Regina. Okay, so I get it. It's probably uncomfortable. If I try to be empathetic in these things. I'm trying to think, okay, what would I do if 9 people were standing outside on the street, on the sidewalk in front of my house? What would I do? I would most definitely walk outside my front door, walk to wherever these people are standing, and I would ask them what the hell they're doing here. Maybe I could read a sign or two to get some context, but I would go and ask them, what the hell are you doing? And maybe get into a conversation to find out what it is they're protesting, what it is they're upset about, and maybe have some dialogue. That's what I would do. But of course, the other point to this, misguided protest to Dr. Shahab's family home in Regina. Now, I've had on 2 occasions now, police officers wearing their firearms and all their other tools and their uniform come to my door, a law-abiding citizen who has done nothing to break the law, who's not a criminal, come to my door twice and issue me $2,800 tickets / summons. At the time, I didn't consider that to be harassment. I didn't consider it to be. But in this context, if we're going to start doing this, then maybe that's what that is. Then maybe it's harassment. Maybe I should put a sign on my front lawn saying, if you walk here without being invited, you're trespassing. Do we get into this? Do we play this game now? There were 9 people on a public sidewalk doing absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing. This harassment of Dr. Shahab and his family at their home is simply unacceptable, sickening, and wrong. Well, I'll tell you what's sickening, Mr. Premier. I'll tell you what's wrong, Mr. Premier. What's sickening and wrong is you have been locking down our province. You have been restricting people's freedoms in our province. You've been limiting our rights under the Charter off and on for 9 months. You're killing the economy. You're killing people's livelihoods. You're killing their businesses. You're destroying children. That's sickening. That's wrong. Based on numbers. Numbers, and we've talked a lot about this, and we're going to keep talking about it because it's the number one linchpin that ends this thing. You talk about numbers, you're basing it all on numbers, case numbers, death numbers derived from a bogus PCR test and a bogus procedure with the PCR test. And we're going to get into that a little bit. And that's what you've done. You haven't led, you've followed. You haven't thought critically. Nobody in your government has thought critically. Nobody in your government, I'm assuming, hasn't exposed themselves to any information outside the narrative that's been rammed down your throat. Whether that's coming from Dr. Shahab, or if you're just telling Dr. Shahab what to say, or he's telling you what to say. Somebody's telling them what to say. We know this because health officers in other parts of the country have said they have no idea what they're talking about. They just read what's on the paper, what they're told to say. So somebody's directing this Titanic. That's sickening and wrong. 9 people standing on the street on a public sidewalk, in the scale of sickening and wrong, you win that prize, Mr. Premier. Tweet number 2 in the thread. To those that did this, you should be ashamed of yourselves and your actions. Mr. Premier, you, sir, should be ashamed that you have chosen not to lead. You have chosen not to do what's in the best interest of your citizens in Saskatchewan. You have chosen to follow. You have chosen the easy road for a politician, backed up by a media who continues to promote the singular narrative. That's the easy job for you. That's the easy road for you. I guess you ignore all the people that are being destroyed by your actions. I guess you're ignoring all the businesses that are going out of business because of your actions. I guess you're ignoring all the children. I guess you're ignoring all the elderly that we keep getting told we're killing grandma when we show up to a protest without a mask. Yet who's really killing the elderly? I would suggest that the Saskatchewan Health Authority, I would suggest Dr. Shahab, I would suggest yourself in creating policies that don't allow for effective treatments that we can see for ourselves are available, like ivermectin and HCQ, right from the beginning. Those are effective, and there's still science out there that suggests that these are effective. In fact, we listened to a doctor testify in a Senate hearing saying that ivermectin is effective treatment. But you didn't want to do that. You would prefer to have the elderly stuck, lonely, dying of loneliness, dying of other comorbidities while getting the flu, and you just let them die without offering them appropriate alternative medicine. Who's killing grandma? After months of spending virtually every waking hour working tirelessly to protect the health and well-being of Saskatchewan people, though this pandemic, I guess he wanted to say through this pandemic, this is the last thing Dr. Shahab deserves. Well, here's the thing. If Dr. Shahab or yourself were willing to have some open forum, some open debates and discussions where we could bring in some of this other evidence that is out there plentifully, like even the World Health Organization on PCR tests, then Dr. Shahab wouldn't have to deal with this because it would be over. Because it's the PCR tests that are creating your numbers. It's the PCR false positives that are creating this heightened numbers. And so I don't feel the least bit sorry for how hard Dr. Shahab has worked, that he's doing his job not very well. You are representing us. You work for us. We don't work for you. We have every right to question the government. We have every right to question the bureaucrats appointed by the government. And when those government officials and those bureaucrats ignore the people and continually push a singular narrative with the help of the media, what do you think is going to happen? And more people are waking up. More and more people are starting to question because the evidence is overwhelming that you and the rest of the premiers and our prime minister and all bureaucrats took us all for a ride down the wrong path. This information that the World Health Organization came out with on the 20th, Inauguration Day in the States, we all knew this. We've been saying it for 9 months. You've known this, and you haven't said a thing. You haven't changed a thing. You just kept on using it. The World Health Organization didn't say a thing either until the 20th of January. Then all of a sudden, they're saying the same thing we've said about these PCR tests. Actions and decisions of the government. As Premier, I know some will disagree with the actions and decisions of the government. And there's going to be a whole lot more coming, trust me. But disagreeing with the decisions made by our government gives no one the right to harass a dedicated public servant and his family. Well, it also doesn't give you the right to harass us using your law enforcement agencies to enforce unlawful orders, but you still do it. There was no law being broken. There was no harassment. They didn't harass anybody. They simply stood there holding signs. Don't blow this out of proportion like we know politicians love to do. If you disagree with the decision our government has made, you can take it up with me. Email me at scott.mo@gov.sask.ca or call your MLA. The Regina Police Service and the RCMP have been engaged to ensure the immediate safety of Dr. Shahab and his family, and I would encourage them to investigate any potential breaches of the law or public health orders and press charges accordingly. So we don't know. I guess the police showed up. There was conversation, but as far as I know, it was deemed lawful because it's a public street and a public sidewalk and people can do what they want. Anyways, in your third or fourth tweet, Mr. Mo, if you disagree with the decision our government has made, you can take it up with me. Email me at scottmo. Okay, so I took you up on that. And I think a lot of people have probably seen my open letter to Scott Moe, but for some that don't, I'm going to give them an opportunity to read it as well. Or I'm going to read it, and you can hear it, and so you guys can then share it. You guys, and I also encourage, if you like what I said, if you like the letter, then just take it, copy it, put it into an email, edit it for whatever purpose, whatever region you're in, and send it to your premier, send it to your MLAs. Do what you want with it. It's there for everybody. This one was directed to our premier in Saskatchewan, but it's more than pertinent to anywhere around the country. So you're welcome to do that. I take no ownership. So here's the letter. Dear Mr. Scott Moe, you recently tweeted that if people had questions regarding the measures taken by your government in relation to COVID, that we could send you an email. I'm pretty sure those actions have been taken en masse for months, completely ignored. But I will try again and take you up on this recent invitation in the form of an open letter. During the last 10 months, there have been protest groups forming across our province and around the country in response to the measures your government and other governments have taken. Cookie-cutter measures being applied around the world, except for sovereign nations like Sweden and sovereign states like South Dakota. I say sovereign because they do not follow the herd of governments taking orders from an unelected foreign body at the World Health Organization, heavily influenced by the Chinese Communist Party. No, they made decisions based on all the available science and in the best interest of their people. Your government, along with enormous help from the media, based all of your decisions on numbers. Numbers, numbers, numbers. Case numbers and death numbers. These numbers have been derived from a PCR test, a test the actual inventor of stated should not be used to diagnose for infection. I include his statement here, and you guys have all seen that video, I'm sure, so I'm not going to go through that. Many folks across our province have been questioning the reliability of the PCR test to amass the numbers you are basing the measures on. We all do that because of the vast amount of information available and provided to us by experts in the field. I will include a couple of those for you to have a look at. So there's Dr. Yeadon and Dr. Bhakti. I've played both of these videos before on my channel. Anybody wants to see them, I highly recommend it. Share them, whatever. For many months, this information has been widely available, yet the media doesn't mention any of it, and your government has failed to even mention these people and their evidence. Here are some more resources you might find helpful while determining the best course of action in the best interest of the people of Saskatchewan. So there's the Corman-Drosten Review Report. This is where it was Drosten that recommended to the German government that they use the PCR in the early stages. And this is the report that completely destroys that decision. After reading and listening to only a few experts, you can quickly understand that there are many issues with the PCR test as a diagnostic tool, but more importantly, as a mechanism to justify lockdowns, measures, and restrictions to our rights and freedoms under the Charter. For months, we have been identifying these issues as loudly and peacefully as possible, falling mostly on deaf ears. Deaf ears in government, deaf ears in the media, and deaf ears in the population, of which have been fear-mongered by the narrative continuously and perpetually by the media and the government. For a flu that has 99.7% recovery rate for anyone healthy under the age of 77. Last week, on the day of the presidential inauguration, coincidentally enough, the World Health Organization released an update notice. That notice confirms, at least in part, what many experts, including the ones I included in this letter, have been saying since the beginning of this crisis, that the test is only an aid in diagnosis, that other tests must be taken to ensure accurate diagnosis. It also clearly states that the healthier a person is, the higher rate of false positives are derived from the tests. That using a 40 CT cycle threshold on healthy people almost assures false positives. In fact, I just watched another video with a study of some folks, and that's the one I referred to at the beginning of the show. It's a fantastic video. I recommend it to everybody. That 33 CT will almost, anything over that will almost ensure 97% false positive in healthy people. Yet you and your government continue to depend on numbers derived from a flawed test, to make decisions that are destroying livelihoods, businesses, childhoods, and lives. Here is that released notice from the World Health Organization, and you guys have seen that. We've talked about that before. World Health Organization notice excerpt, WHO reminds IVD users that disease prevalence alters the predictive value of test results. As disease prevalence decreases, the risk of false positive increases. This means that the probability that a person who has a positive result is truly infected with SARS decreases as prevalence decreases, irrespective of the claimed specificity. Most PCR assays are indicated as an aid for diagnosis. Therefore, healthcare professionals must consider any result in combination with timing of sampling, specimen type, assay specifics, clinical observation, patient history, confirmed status of contacts, and epidemiological information. That's not happening. That's not happening in our province or any province. They're running a one-stop testing shop for people to line up and drive through to get tested. There is nothing else brought into the equation, as we have been saying for months. You can't just take a test, especially cycled at 40, and expect to get a proper number, a proper diagnosis. But that's what you've been doing. And that's how you've derived all of these numbers. And that's how you're justifying all of these measures based on the numbers derived from this test and procedures that are ridiculously unreliable. An unelected foreign body heavily influenced by the communist Chinese that was fully aware of the problems presented by a PCR test, but only chose to recognize those issues 1 year later, while governments around the world, including yours, based everything on numbers solely derived from this test, without including all the other tests required to establish accurate numbers, effectively nullifying your justification for the measures you have imposed upon a generally misguided and ill-informed population. Furthermore, while freedom rally groups have been actively and peacefully demanding that you open the debate on these issues and others, you, along with the media, have contributed to the shaming, ridicule, and abuse we have all had to endure. For simply demanding open and transparent debate and dialogue, you have divided the people of our province based on a singular narrative, a narrative established by unelected foreign entities and propagated by the government in concert with the mainstream media. You have also put many people in an unwarranted legal situation by instructing law enforcement to unlawfully ticket and fine good people just looking for the truth while being the voice of many asking questions. Many of those folks have been silenced for fear of losing their job and fear of facing the same shaming and ridicule from a fearful society. A fearful society you have nurtured, all the while completely ignoring our rights and freedoms under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, i.e., freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, freedom of mobility, and the rights of life, liberty, and security of the person. The Charter is very clear. These rights are guaranteed and shall not be limited, subject only to government demonstrably proving that these limitations are reasonable and appropriate for the circumstance. You have not done that. It is precisely what we have been demanding at every freedom rally. See the Oakes test. We've gone through the Oakes test before. We know what that is. That's basically the standards that the governments have to meet in order to limit certain rights and freedoms under the Charter. Courts in other jurisdictions, we've talked about in Portugal, we talked about in Sarajevo, and just recently, there's another one would have liked to have added to this letter. I just saw it today. In Germany, there was a court that ruled against the lockdowns being against human rights. Finally, while rallying and protesting around the province and across the country, we are continually framed as anti-maskers, shamed for being conspiracy theorists, ridiculed for simply demanding the truth, demanding our rights be protected under the Charter, and demanding open and honest debate and dialogue. We have also been accused of killing grandma, as if us not wearing a mask or social distancing outside in the fresh air is going to expose grandma to death by virus. The only one killing grandma, or in better terms, exposing our elderly to death, would be the folks who have denied treatment to our elderly. Effective treatments like ivermectin and HCQ, among others. While the elderly is being locked up, lonely, and are dying, you have chosen to follow the global narrative established by the World Health Organization in partnership with Big Pharma. Vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. A vaccine that has not even gone through any appropriate testing. A vaccine that is literally killing people and disabling people around the world. All the while, people cannot get in for elective diagnostic procedures because our hospitals are overwhelmed with COVID. Overwhelmed the same way they've been overwhelmed every year during the flu season, as per our nursing union screaming every year to date. If in fact this is a real concern, a lot of us are doubtful. You had months to create more beds and hire more staff to deal with the second wave. You failed to do that. Why? My guess is because you knew the hospitalizations were no greater this year than any year, and you didn't want to hire a bunch of new staff for something that will pass. But we're killing grandma. The measures you have taken have far worse consequences than the actual disease. The cure is worse than the disease. And there we have the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, lockdowns more deadly than COVID-19. And in Toronto, Toronto Sun, research finds lockdown harms are 10 times greater than the benefits. And then we have the video testimony on ivermectin. Mr. Premier, it is way past time to do the right thing. At the very least, it is time to open the debate and discussion regarding the above information. I understand the political risk this information puts you in and the consequences to telling the truth now versus before. It most likely challenges your political career. But isn't the truth more important? Aren't the lives, livelihoods, childhoods of Canadians and Saskatchewan residents more important than your career? Yet it seems your biggest concern, your biggest inspiration to get tough comes after 9 people stood on a public sidewalk outside Dr. Shahab's residence because those people are tired and frustrated at being completely ignored. Real leaders choose to do what is best for the people that elected them to do just that. You have chosen to follow the globalist herd instead of leading and making decisions in the best interest of all the people of Saskatchewan. Now is the time for redemption. Now is the time to lead. Lead our province out of this mess. The evidence is clear and abundant to support doing the right thing instead of following the globalist herd. Sincerely, me. So I sent that off to his email box. I don't have my hopes up that he's going to respond. But you never know, and we got to try. My hope is that this letter will be seen by a lot of people and hopefully open some eyes. We had an incident yesterday. Scott Moe lit everybody's hair on fire over it, so we have to take advantage of that. And kudos to the folks in Regina for creating another situation that the discussion gets in where it needs to be. And unfortunately, these are the steps we have to take to do that. So kudos, good work. We'll see. I'm assuming we won't hear anything back other than possibly some sort of a form letter, some sort of a generic sort of thing. But like I said, I've created also a petition. Again, not that the petition in and of itself is going to force the hand of government. However, we saw a petition last week over hockey, over kids and parents that want their kids to play hockey. Got to 10,000 people. And we saw Premier Moe address that petition and actually had it in his hand and responded to that petition. Now, of course, he spun it and made it into a thing that he could try to explain why all this is necessary. But a lot of people aren't stupid. There's quite a few that are. But when they see that, how he responds to it, it's going to wake up more people. They're going to start to connect the dots. They're going to start to see that all this is hogwash. So I created a petition, not because I believe it will directly change the government, but it's as an educational tool, as something that we can say, okay, here's 25,000 people in Saskatchewan that have said we've had enough. Let's have the debate. Let's have the discussion. I'm amazed on Twitter how many people have dug in and agree that we shouldn't have a discussion, that we shouldn't have a debate, that all the evidence should be on the table. It's amazing to me how anyone could justify their position of not wanting open and transparent debate. It's amazing to me. You're completely unreasonable. You're completely biased and maybe ideologically driven if you don't think that it's important to have an open and honest, transparent debate and discussion. That's what we need. The reason I want that is because I know the evidence. I know what the experts have said. I know where the evidence is. I know what the proof is. And they do too. That's why I want it, and that's why they won't have it. Because we all know what the evidence is. And they would be going against their handlers. They would be going against whoever told them they had to do these things. And right now, you have a population that has been misguided by the media and have no understanding and no idea what's happening. It's up to us to get it out there. And this is just another way of trying to get this message out there. So share the petition, share the letter. And again, if you're from other provinces, if you're from wherever, by all means, copy it, edit it, use it any way you need to in your province. Just take it. It's for everybody. Hopefully, it's part of the equation to end all of this insanity. Yeah, Rio, I got I got other technical issues too. My screen is all fuzzy and there's lots of things going on here. I'm not sure what's going on. Uh, so as long as you guys can hear me, as long as you guys can see me, I'll deal with whatever I got to deal with on my end here. Which means I'm having also a hard time reading the comments, you guys. So again, apologize. But so yeah, so share it out. Get it out there. I'd love to see 25,000 signatures or 25,000 people signing that petition to force them to respond. We need them to respond. We need them to know that they've received it. And the only way we're going to have any hope of that is if we get good numbers. And I've tried to make this as public as possible. I've posted it on Twitter, Facebook, Gab, Liberty, and now I'm just read it off in a video on all the platforms. So, I'm hoping with that amount of attention that he'll feel somewhat obliged to respond. And if he does, I look forward to that response. This has to end. This just, I can't take it, and neither can a lot of other people. It doesn't make sense. It's not legitimate. It's not what we should be doing. I mean, the next day in America after the inauguration, Democrat states, restaurants are opening. Everything's going back to normal, just like that, like somebody flipped the switch. Governor Cuomo is now saying that we can't go on with these lockdowns. Immediately after Biden was inaugurated. Come on, really? I'm not totally convinced that this was only about getting Trump out and getting Biden in. I mean, there's a good argument that can be made that it was specifically for that purpose because they needed to get Trump out. They needed to get the United States on board with the agenda, the Great Reset, all this stuff. And now they have that, so it can go away. Save it for another day because they'll just continue to do this. But maybe relieve it, and then all of a sudden Joe Biden takes credit for solving COVID. So what I think you're going to see, and again, I don't know, I know there's a much bigger agenda at play here, but I know the importance of the United States in the equation of achieving their goals. So it could very well have been strictly to get Trump out and Biden in, But I think it's more than that. I think there's a lot of reasons for what we've seen throughout this whole scamdemic. So they might play it that way. But there's more coming. And this was conditioning and social engineering and all of this stuff. So, maybe with all of the evidence coming out and all of the truth coming out, maybe it's better, maybe they see it as better to just let this one go away until we get one that's far more deadly, right? And we can again scare the masses instead of having the masses push this thing, and then we inform the masses and show the masses what's really happening. So maybe they want to catch it before that happens. I don't know. Just throwing it out there, just spitballing. Anyway, cut it. This has to end. And we absolutely cannot let it happen again. We have to hold our politicians accountable. They work for us. They serve the people. The people do not serve the government. People have to get out of this mindset that the government dictates everything. Stop it. We dictate. And we have to be smarter as a society. We have to be critical. We have to think. We have to expose ourselves to other information, to opposing views, so this doesn't happen. I mean, just think about it. If you're on the left, how would you like a government? I mean, I guess you like it because we're watching it right now in Saskatchewan. You have a right wing. They're not right wing, but perceived as such, dictating and taking away your freedoms, and you're all like, "Yay!" It's insane. It is. It's insane. Especially with all the information that's available. So we really have to stop this. We really have to. And it's up to the people. The politicians aren't going to stop unless they're forced to stop. And that comes from the people. They work for us. Seriously, folks, just if you know people that don't know anything, get them to read the letter, get them to watch this, get them to look at the video I just posted on Twitter and Facebook regarding the PCRs. I mean, it's two regular folks, well, third, there's one on a video screen, showing people exactly what's wrong with the PCR. It's very clear, it's very easy to understand, and once you get it, once we all get it, this ends tomorrow. We go back to normal tomorrow. It's really that simple. The PCR is the whole linchpin to this thing. You pull that linchpin and it's over. Because you can't call it a pandemic when you don't have the numbers to justify it. And then you don't have the measures. You don't have justification for the lockdowns and restrictions. You just don't have it. It doesn't exist without the PCR. And there's so much evidence and so many doctors out there that have the evidence that shows and explains why, up to and including the World Health Organization, who's known this since before COVID. Come on. It's really that easy. It's really that easy. Anyways, I wanted to share the letter here with you guys. I want to make sure it gets out there. I want to make sure you guys spread it. It's in the description. Share it out. Share out the petition. Get as many people to sign that thing as possible to show numbers. We really have to do it. Next week, we are going to Regina for a protest because we owe them. They've been up here twice, and we've only went down there once. Although we did go to Moose Jaw, but we still kind of owe them. And we want to talk about it. The protest is going to be geared specifically to protest the PCR test. It'll be a PCR protest, and hopefully we'll get thousands of people there that have had enough and understand the scam and get it, and understand that if you pull the PCR linchpin, this thing ends tomorrow. We all go to work. We all go to school. We all go to hockey. We all go to our sports. We all open our businesses and carry on as we should. Because there's no justification without manipulated PCR tests. It just doesn't exist. It's not there. And they can decide how they want to deal with long-term care facilities. There has to be some sort of strategy. I would suggest probably introducing ivermectin and HCQ as effective therapies to whatever this is. But who am I, right? But whatever, you guys figure it out. Just open the damn province. So, anyways, next week at the Ledge, 2 p.m. Be there. I get a kick out of people who responded to Mo there and said, I have no problem with you guys protesting, and everyone's saying, yeah, it's okay to protest, just not in front of somebody's house. But last week, it wasn't okay to protest. Last week, we were killing grandma because we went to a protest not wearing a mask or social distancing. Now, because we've moved the needle, it's now okay to protest. We understand you got to protest. Just do it, where you're supposed to do it. Come on. Anyways, next week, Regina, next Saturday, 2 p.m. at the Ledge, PCR protest. Let's bring this shit down. Enough's enough. Other than that, I think that's it for tonight. I said it was going to be a short one. I just wanted to come on. It's already been an hour almost, from what I can see. So yeah, that's it. Nice short one, easily shareable. And thanks for joining. Much appreciated. Share it out. Share the petition. Share the letter. Get it out there. Let's make this happen. Love you guys. And remember, globalism bad, nationalism good.